are you today? Hello. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. How's everyone? How are you today? I thought I should take a minute to share something that I learned today that is happening in some part of Acholi land, but it's not a surprise. So let's get into it. My name is Lady Winnie. I live in the United States, but I'm an Acholi from Uganda by tribe. Thank you all for the words of encouragement, the support. You know, sometimes I wondered if this was a good way to go or contribute to my country, and it has come to my fulfillment that it actually, you know, has been beneficial to one or two people here and there. So I hope you're one of them. Thank you, Floor. Thank you for coming. Cosmas, thank you. You're the second. I learned something from that's happening in Omoro. Omoro district is a part of northern Uganda where the late Jacob Oulanya was a member of parliament, for which he then became Speaker of Parliament. Many of you know that he is succeeded by Mrs. Anita Among. But northern Uganda, a little bit of the history, and maybe I'll do this in Acholi also eventually. What I've learned about northern Uganda from history and what's happening now is that, being that power or leadership of Uganda since independence, we had Buganda in the leadership or presidency, then became then we had Obore, then we had Idi Amin. But with Museveni coming into power, he felt very threatened by, you know, people from northern Uganda. Okay, and so I want to bring it from how we came about to be an area that's very deserted and forgotten, and in fact an area that has been very broken. So right after Obode, his regime is done, Museveni takes over. What Museveni primarily did right away was to try to break Acholi people, or people from northern Uganda and West Nile, because as you might know, Idi Amin is from West Nile. He made sure to break those people so that there will never rise a presidency or leadership or some kind of coup to try to topple him, because he felt very, very comfortable when he became president of Uganda. Remember, Museveni became president of Uganda through Obote regime. After working for Obote for a while, he worked in the military, worked in statistics and areas where he collected a lot of data. Okay, and that data, which I think they say he worked for the Bureau of Statistics or something like that, and standards. That data helped Museveni strategically manipulate or disarm, for example, Acholi people, West Nile, or eastern part of Uganda. And so what he did in Acholi, which there's videos to prove, he, first of all, before the camps came about, my father was in the military, so I can attest to this. My grandfather was a medical doctor. What he did, like he's trying to do in Buganda region right now, was to terrorize people. Okay, they were so terrorized that even amongst each other, they didn't trust each other, let alone trust people of other regions. If you might remember, the name Anyanya was labeled on the Acholi people or the West Nile or the Eastern people, but mostly the Acholi Why the Acholi? Because Museveni wanted to make sure that no other part of Uganda would even encourage the thought of dealing with an Acholi, let alone working with them or even living with them. You know, so in that way, he started by causing animosity amongst the Acholi people, divisions. Eventually, he started injecting a lot of our elders, like my father's people who joined the NRA and then the Museveni's military. Those people died mysteriously. Many of them were injected with the HIV virus or AIDS. They were helpless. Lacho Hospital already existed. As you know, Idi Amin built all these wonderful places and structures. Obote also did, you know, a good job making a country of Uganda, you know, to the standard of a country on the way to getting, you know, what Museveni talks about, middle income or whatever. He only dreams about, because Museveni has reduced and destroyed everything Idi Amin and Obote built. So, in efforts to break the Acholi people, the Langese, who are directly the Obote's family or tribe, the Acholi people who are close to the Langese tribe, the West Nile where Idi Amin came from, Teso, which was close to, you know, the north and the east, he made sure to make those men to never lift their head again. And if they did, they had no other person to come together with to come up with an idea to overthrow him or to see through him. Remember, Obote knew exactly what Museveni was, but it took him so long to act because he got comfortable with having Museveni help him maintain him in power. But when Museveni learned everything about Obote's government, he broke that government. He took over. So, in essence, Museveni, as a worker in Obote's government, learned every useful information and statistics and just used it to his advantage to break up people and break down any possibility of reorganization. So I want to arrive at something that is happening in northern Uganda, but I'd like to bring it from where it stems from. So then came that time after he takes over government. You know, many people, Acholis were mainly known to be fighters, so they were in the military. Buganda was mainly known to be in trade or business. Western was with Buganda, I believe, in trade and business. And so people like the Karamojongs or Eastern people were much more like the West Nile and Northern Uganda, just, you know, education, and were focused on things like that because it was possible. So after he took over, he made sure that the men were especially killed somehow. Some of them were, because they were in the military, Museveni sent them to places of war, and he set up enemies on the other side to come and kill all the military that were, especially from the Acholi sub-region or Eastern or West Nile. The other way was to inject them with HIV virus. Many of them died. Many of them died. And so they took the virus home and infected families and women and men and you know, families back home. Eventually, because they didn't know how this was happening. Remember, when we think about those times of Phile Bongole Lutaya, when he came out and started to speak about HIV/AIDS, you know, it was something that was already festering, courtesy of Museveni and his Rwandese people. They knew what to do to cause a result that they expect. So that happened. Many military who were actually, in fact, my grandfather, my uncles, my dad were all in the military. It was something of a career of sorts, which you can see in the Western world. People, certain families are designated a certain direction. Like you say, we are all families of the Air Force. You know, all of us are pridefully families of this. Even if someone is a plumber here, you will be surprised. The whole family will follow the lineage of being a plumber, pridefully. Because, you know, when you know something and you know it very well, and it's passed on, it is something that you always know that there is a fallback position if you needed to. So skillfully, they were able to maintain certain status quo because of their abilities and build and all of that. So killing them through the wars and staging wars and things like that. Like, there's a story about Museveni sending the military to Chisangani in Congo. And Kayira was one of the leaders who was there commanding that troop. But Museveni set up a stage whereby he set enemies to go, as if they were enemies, like he does ADF now. He sent the military on a mission in Congo, in Kisangani. Then he also set up Rwanda's troops to go and attack that military at a time that he says they should. So what happens was they set up, pitch camp and all that. And then, the Rwandese people always use the women. They send the women lots of alcohol. So when these guys were nice and drunk, okay, what Museveni then did was to order or send the troops, the Rwandese people, to come and attack the Ugandans in their camp. And so when they did, Kayira, I understand, called Museveni and said, Commander-in-Chief, we are being attacked. What do we do? And guess what Museveni told him? He told him and said, stand down, do not attack. So because he planned it, all the soldiers that were with the Kayiras, all of them were killed. All of them. Indigenous Ugandan soldiers who he picks and gives assignments and says, you have a job to do. You're all going to Congo. Everybody bought the trip, the truck or whatever. Get them there. And then he throws power at, he kills them. He set up the Rwandese military to go and attack, and indeed they killed all the military there. So in many ways, he has been able to chop power and things here and there to try to keep him in power. That is why you see that even those great people that were in the bush with Museveni, the people like Kayira, people who came with him, you will notice that none of them is still here, but Museveni is still here. Okay, all his Rwandese people, you will never hear that they're going to a burial of some Rwandese fallen general or something like that. No, it is always the Ugandan people who are dying like flies. Besigye was in the bush with him. Salim Saleh was in the bush. How come he's not, affected in any way? There's several others. Nothing happens to those people, but the Ugandan ones die daily. So anyway, then comes, HIV and many of the soldiers being killed that way. Then Museveni feels dissatisfied because he realizes that there's still young adults or young people who are growing up in the Acholi sub-region. And I'm talking, when I say Acholi, I mean like West Nile also, and some part of Teso. What he does then is to figure out how to compromise them further. Okay, many of you are aware of the LRA war, which happened in northern Uganda. Before the LRA war, there was the Kejongs, Karamojongs, or people who are stealing cows or just hitting and running. They would come and attack a village and run away, or take their cows and all of that. It is no wonder the Museveni people came with nothing, okay? But now they have millions of cows. Those were the cows they raided from northern Uganda, Teso, Karamojong, and took them to wherever, the Rwandese communities and the groups, they divided it among themselves. These people came barehanded. If you see some photos of like Kagame walking around, it's like a homeless guy. The Musevenis came, they were refugees. They were registered refugees without much, but now own everything in Uganda. Everything basically. The real indigenous Uganda struggles to get by every day, to even get food, to live on less than $1, and maybe they don't even see $1 for a week. I can, it's true, because the support, people who live abroad or people who have family that live abroad can attest to you that truly when somebody says we have nothing, it is nothing. I remember being in that place where we didn't have a penny, and that's it. Nothing. So if you didn't have anything in the garden or anything anywhere, there was nothing. And that's where we are now. That is where we are. But in the Acholi sub-region, after taking all their cows, taking all of their adults in the military or the armed forces or the educated, they thought and said, how else can we break these people further? What did they do? They started to cause the LRA war. In the LRA war, the Lord Resistance Army war, truly, when the NRM or Museveni's people were starting to attack Acholi people, when Joseph Kony stood up to come and then they labeled him a terrorist, you know, like they're trying to label National Unity Platform and His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu as a rebel, Joseph Kony came up to support his people. The Alice Lakwanas and all of that, they came to try to fight this Museveni people. People like Mugisha Muntu should be able to tell the real story about what happened in northern Uganda. So anyways, starting from 1986, around the time Museveni comes to power, the LRA war lasts around 20 years. 20 solid years. Imagine. People living in camps, all of the adults. So everything that Museveni intended was to be sure to eliminate every intellectual, every educated person, every senior, everyone that knew good history. The same things he's now doing in Uganda, trying to eliminate the wealthy or the people who are well-to-do or knowledgeable or elites. He did in Acholi sub-region. They sent spies to villages to spy on who is who. You know, let alone coming out to say which people are the Obote people, which people are not the Obote people. No. This time he sent spies to find out which people are strong enough or brilliant enough that could regroup and cause his government to fall. So then we have the LRA war. Many thousands and millions of people, young children, you know, they'll tell you about child soldiers, or they'll tell you about children who had to travel from home to their place to sleep in the night every day because they feared that in the villages they'd get attacked and taken away. And so all of that happens. Joseph Kony is labeled a terrorist or a rebel. And so Museveni acts like he's on a manhunt for Joseph Kony. Now, if you can think with me a little bit, truly, if Joseph Kony was in the backyard in Acholi sub-region, okay, and Museveni is the president of Uganda, let's say that the way people portray Museveni, the Western world that thinks Museveni is all-powerful and that, why was he not able to put out a war in his backyard in northern Uganda, in Acholi sub-region? If truly Museveni is the power that they think he is, just to show them that this man hoodwinked the Western world into thinking that he is a peacemaker in the region. He's the Somalian person, he's the person here and there. How come he could not put out war in his backyard? That goes to show you how far these people have come to try to take over Uganda and